I love movies. Gosh, I love movies. Here we go.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Grindhaus podcast with Dave and Matt. Matt, this week has been a wonderfully wacky, weird week in the world of cinema.
I suppose it has. Yes, there's been some pretty experimental and interesting releases that we've been enjoying. I think you're thinking of stuff like Blood Machines that came out on Shudder this week.
Blood Machines is right at the top of my thought process. I think also David Lynch's Fire.
I haven't
a short
seen that
animated film. But you saw the monkey one, right?
Yes, I also don't know what it's called. It's a 20-minute film of David Lynch talking to a monkey in black and white.
Yeah, it's like something Jack. What did Jack do? Or talking to Jack or something like that. Basically, if you've not seen this, David Lynch has put out 2 shorts within the last couple of weeks. The first one was him on a train car, kind of with a noir aesthetic, black and white. You know, obviously shot maybe on Super 16, and he's interviewing or interrogating a monkey who can also speak.
Yeah,
he's got the old annoying orange thing where like the lips are cut out and there's human lips talking for him.
Yeah, it's like the surliest, grittiest, like Telly Savalas kind of monkey you've ever seen. Too.
Yeah,
This is not a cute monkey.
No, well, I guess depends on your point of view, but
well, he is cute until you hear him talk, and then it's like,
right, yeah.
Oh man, get that monkey a pack of smokes.
But like if you had if you needed a monkey bro, like wouldn't he be a pretty good monkey bro? Like, come on, monkey, we're gonna go to the bar. Like, I'd want that monkey to go with me because A, he'd be pretty entertaining.
Yeah. And
B, like if some shit went down, that monkey's got your back.
Yeah, that monkey's seen some shit, man. He's ready for it. He's been
thrown
to the
down.
crunch. He's ready.
He's got some scars.
Oh yeah, some knife wounds. He's made some scars.
Yeah, I'm sure. Rip some faces off. That monkey will be your Huckleberry.
Yep.
In a drop of a hat.
And I just want to point out too that we are not making the common mistake of calling like a chimpanzee or a orangutan a monkey. Like this thing's a freaking monkey. It's like a spider monkey or something. It's like
he's got a tail, right?
Yeah. It's pretty cute stuff. I mean, he is cute. He's cute. That's probably why he's so surly, man. It's kind of like that Johnny Cash, A Boy Named Sue concept, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You grow up a spider monkey your whole life, man. You're gonna have to learn to, defend yourself and
squab a little bit.
Yeah,
use your nub.
Yeah,
people. So there was that short, which was awesome on Netflix. You can watch it now. It's something about Jack, and then he released another short film on YouTube this time, which was animated, which was called Fire, or subtitled Poser. Yes. And I don't really know how to describe it other than it's about, I guess, maybe Prometheus creating fire. And then there's some houses on fire. And then there's some shadow elk people dancing for a long period of time. And then there's another house, and I think the moon is in it or the sun. I don't remember. It's wacky, to say the least.
That sounds, I mean,
sublime.
It's animated, and I know it's very different, but it kind of reminds me of when he put that album out and he made that music video where there was just like all these crazy people in a backyard kind of having a party and kind of just doing like totally insane things together.
Yeah.
Like I think a guy had his head on fire, and like there was a topless woman running around, and like a guy in football pads doing drills. It was just like all this random shit, but it was like a party somehow.
Yeah, which is the first thing that I'm going to do the moment this quarantine is over.
Gonna have a David Lynch backyard barbecue, head on fire party.
That would when the restrictions lift. If you can. Or maybe I should go there because you actually have a backyard. Someone should throw a David Lynch themed party.
Yeah, Crazy Clown Time Party. That was the name of that video.
Oh, no, but I'm saying David Lynch, whereas you have to show up as a David Lynch character to a party.
Oh, yeah,
that'd be pretty awesome.
Who would you be?
Nick Cage from Wild at Heart.
Oh, nice. Now you're gonna have to find a vegan snakeskin jacket.
I have actually looked into this already.
Belief in self-expression.
I have non-ironically already looked into this.
Good.
They do exist. and I will find it.
I'll be Frank in the well-dressed man suit.
Okay, all right.
With the big creepy black fake paste-on eyebrows and mustache.
You could just do what Charlie Harris did and dye your eyebrows black one day.
He totally looked like that. We had a friend that is just the most white ginger guy in the world, and he just went for it, man. Black beard, black eyebrows, black hair. And if you've seen Blue Velvet, that horrible disguise that Dennis Hopper wears, it was like he was just that all day long.
It was brilliant.
You remember I tried that actually when we were young.
Did you?
Because I remember that because someone was like,
you have brown hair though.
No, but I have brown hair. But I remember I think we were about 20, and I think it was maybe your sister helped me do it or something. And I dyed my eyebrows, my hair, and my mustache black. And then we all went to an Italian restaurant together, all of us, and I remember feeling like really silly because it was like the black dye had kind of gone out from the hair, so it was as if I had like black bars above my eyes, and like my girlfriend wouldn't go near me, man. When she came over to the house and I opened the door, she just ran. So yeah, be careful with that black hair dye.
Well, the thing with the black hair dye is it dyes your scalp, so like it's not that big a deal on your head.
Yeah.
But like anywhere else that's not as thickly follicled as the top of your head, it just looks like you did like you took that football eye makeup, whatever the football players put on their eyes,
Oh yeah, it's that stuff. Yeah, it's just like that.
Yeah, it's like it looks like you just took that and drew like an arced line over your eyebrows. So you gotta do what the ladies do, and you gotta shave your eyebrows first and just pencil it in.
That's a good look. I think that would work for both of us. No, but you were actually the one, because I remember it was my first time, going black #1, and you were like you with the goth experience, where you were like, you got to go to HEB. It costs about $3, and there's a picture of an Asian woman on the box.
Yes, true black.
Yeah, so that's what I brought home, and just me and your sister just dumped it all over my head and face, and looked amazing.
Since it's nearly been 20 years since I gave that advice, I feel I must update my advice, as I have. But aside from my sister being a hairdresser, I've also had many relationships with hairdressers, and they would all kill me now, like Brutus turning on Caesar, if I still recommended going to the store and buying box dye. So don't do that. When the restrictions lift, go see a proper hairstylist. They'll get very mad at me if you do box dye. Don't do that.
So while we're here talking about salon tips and stuff, we should probably explain to you what's going on. If you're watching on YouTube, we are floating on the horizon of this purple planet and watching one of our favorite cosmic horror films, The Void, on Shudder right now. I've asked Dave to meet me here because cosmic horror is getting huge, but Dave has noticed that it's going in like almost like a new direction, maybe, or maybe it's been going this way for a while, but it's not so much about the cosmic anymore. It's more about the palette.
Yeah, well, so what got me thinking about it was over the last few weeks, I went back and rewatched Showtime's Penny Dreadful. Did you ever watch that show?
I've had it recommended to me multiple times.
It's excellent. I really think you'd enjoy it, but it's very traditional. It's very traditional Victorian aesthetic, and it's beautifully shot and wonderfully acted, and but it very much is steep in nostalgia. And with the coming release of Blood Machines, it got me thinking. I saw Shudder put out a little ad that was recommending some of the other movies. A movie that you've recommended before in the past, Bliss, was one of those movies, and The Void, which we're watching now via Shudder. Shout out to Shudder. Watch and subscribe. And Mandy, which we did our very first show on. In fact, partially what inspired us to do this show some 70-odd episodes later. And of course, Blood Machines. And there was one thing that just jumped out at me immediately, which was that gone from these movies were the traditional color palettes you normally see in horror. The shadow play and the desaturated look and the grays and muted blues and things of that nature. I mean, you might get a splatter of blood here and there, but even then, half the time the blood looks brown, Mm-hmm. It's like that real gruesome, like what I like to call in the 90s, grim and gritty. Do you remember that in comic books when all the comic books were going grim and gritty?
Kind of like the Frank Miller era stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Spawn and there's Image Comics. So it feels like for a long time, a lot of horror has kind of been in that world of like grim and gritty. But there's some new filmmakers coming around. We talk about Pathos from what's the Behind the Black Rainbow and Mandy, who are changing it up some. You know, they're like infusing these weird otherworldly neons, the pinks and the purples and these neon blues, and the whole sort of vibe of these horror films is less spooky, I guess. And with these new colors that are being introduced, it's more like unsettling, unnerving.
It's disorienting.
Mentally disorienting is a great way to say it.
It's like the colors take you into it's something you're not used to, I guess. It's that the palette that all the pinks and purples and neons and stuff. It gets so alien.
That's a great way to say it. Yeah, there was speaking. We talked about my sister earlier. Did you ever remember when Ash and I were living together and we had that one wall that was painted red?
Yes.
So my sister's very artistic, and she decided to paint this accent wall like bright red. And I did some reading up on it. I don't know what inspired me. I think my mom was like really against this idea of this red wall, but if you were to paint, there's a theory that if you were to paint all the walls in your house red, that it would slowly drive you insane.
Okay.
Have you heard this?
No.
It's a real thing. It's like blue, for example. If you were to like, sometimes you see celebrities, they wear like these sunglasses with like the blue tinted window, glass, right? Lenses. Yeah. What that is supposed to do is curve your hunger. And give you like a general feeling of euphoria and serenity.
Yeah, I had a friend. He ordered this color therapy kit one time, and it was a box with like 15 different pairs of cheap sunglasses, all with different color lenses, and instructions on how to curate it throughout the week. your sunglass hue to make your to control your moods and such.
Yeah,
things.
How did it work?
You never know. I mean, he's always kind of a Zen guy that tries a lot of things, but he ended up just wearing the yellow ones all the time. I think he just liked the look of them.
Those are cool. There was a little while there where I had kind of inspired by Tony Stark from Iron Man. I bought these red lens shades. Dude, it was like every time I wore those and walked outside, especially on a sunny day, it was like walking into Mad Max wasteland.
Yeah.
There was something like post-apocalyptic about every time I went outside. Also, fun fact, red lenses will cancel out green stoplights.
Oh, that makes sense.
You can't see them illuminate.
Yeah.
You can see the red, but you can't see the green illuminate, which makes driving really dangerous.
Yeah,
I don't recommend that.
It's like that episode of Seinfeld where the chicken restaurant had the big red neon sign outside of Kramer's apartment, and he drank the tomato juice thinking it was milk, and just do all kinds of weird stuff. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. So color can really impact your mood, and also and because of that, like, it's so exciting to see these younger like indie filmmakers experimenting with colors outside of the genre. Like, who would ever associate these bright neon glow colors with horror?
No, it works.
But
it definitely works. I mean, you talk about Lynch, and he's probably one of the ones that kind of got into this idea first. I would say, like with Twin Peaks and his red room, those red curtains, which are literally are just like the curtains that you would have on a stage. But like there was something about that red and the way it moved, and like that lets you know that when you were there, you were outside of their world, outside of our world, like you were in something else.
Yes, and it was used creatively, and also made his show stand out. Right, even like the color scheme in the appropriately named Blue Velvet. Yeah. Right. You get that loungy, sleepy kind of vibe to it, kind of sultry, equal parts sultry and sleazy. So in seeing this sort of genre. I mean, then I wouldn't even say that they're all like in the same genre from like a topical standpoint, but from an aesthetic standpoint, to me, like, sure, you could call it cosmic horror, but really, I like to think of it as neon horror.
Right. No, I could see that. Yeah, because it's the vibrance. It's a color. You know what it is? It's kind of like a color palette that was mainly just kind of used by science fiction for the longest time.
Yeah,
it was the color of spaceship, laser blasts and flares and weird robots and stuff. And now it's but now it's this disorienting, strange. It's something about that neon too. It's got almost like a nauseating feel sometimes. Like if Color Out of Space really pulled it off. I was kind of worried about that because the whole thing of H.P. Lovecraft's story is that it's this color that doesn't exist on Earth. It's like
right.
And so you have to use your imagination, and obviously to make a film, you have to use a color that you can't invent a color. That's not a thing. So. But I mean, maybe, I don't know, Crayola, but it's been a while since we've had new colors. So, but yeah, it was cool that, I mean, of course it just ended up being kind of like a pinkish sort of weird thing, but that it wasn't cute, man. It was like,
right.
You felt like that color could make you ill. You felt like it could do something to your brain, kind of like you're talking about with the Red Room and the driving you insane. I don't know. You ever heard that theory that's about blue?
No. What about it?
Well, blue's not really a commonly occurring color in nature. Like, it's not. We don't have blue food that we would like be. That we would have. Well, blueberries are out there, but like you think of like how humans evolve. We don't really naturally seek blues. Greens, yes. Things that we're used to as food that are part of our diet. Reds probably from eating, hunting and whatever. But like as far as blues go, blue became this thing that. Yeah, you were able to think of blueberries, but then after that, it's like George Carlin did that bit that was like, "Where's all the blue food?" And it was pretty funny, but he had a point. Like, there's really nothing natural, I mean, you could say the sea and the sky, but like even that they say is kind of an illusion, that it's so the point. The theory is, though, when you look at a lot of old writings, like you go back to like Homer and the Odyssey, the Iliad, it's one of those two. You see references to the sea as red, the red, sea being red and the red water, and it's strange, and it seems like blue being described in writing kind of coincides in history with the discovery of blue dyes, which blue dyes for a long time were so rare that they were kind of only limited to royalty and very high nobility. So most people would live their life without actually seeing
the color blue.
The color blue, yeah. And
is that where the terminology blue blood comes from?
Could be, yeah. I know royal blue is, I mean, that's there's not like there's a royal red, so
yeah,
but
right.
it was such a rare thing occurring in not just in nature but just people's lives in general, that they believe that until people started seeing like actual blue objects that were like, couldn't be anything else. Like maybe they even saw the sky as a different color. They saw the sea as a different color. I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's like this idea that you need something to associate and to have it described to you before you can start to interpret it that way.
Well, see, I could absolutely believe that because, there's a couple of things to consider. Like when you were a kid, I don't know if I'm the only one who ever did this, but like, did you ever ponder whether what you see as a color is the same as what someone else sees as a color? Like, for example, I used to do this thing where I'm like, okay, I see the grass as green, right? And if I asked you what color grass was, most likely you would say green, correct?
Right.
I mean, I guess it could be beige or dried, but green is typically the response given. But when I was a kid, I always used to wonder, like, if I were to like quantum leap into your brain and I looked at grass, would it appear yellow as far as my understanding of color would be?
Right.
Right? And would everything that associates with green be yellow within your mind's eye. But of course, you would know no difference because there would be a continuity.
Yeah, the words
right?
that we use are color. The words that we use to describe colors are labels that we put on different spectrums, different wavelengths of light. And you're right. Like, we don't have any way of knowing if the experience of seeing those wavelengths is the same for everyone. It could be completely different.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so from that, when you start thinking about, that we associate labels on things without really knowing, and maybe there's some scientist who's going to correct us, but knowing like what someone else perceives and how they perceive it. And then there's the idea that time is an illusion, that in fact we only perceive time, right? That time doesn't actually exist, that everything that has ever happened has already happened and is happening instantaneously, infinitely.
All right. And did you
see this?
Why do you bring up the time thing? What is that?
Well, I'll get there in a second.
Getting around to it.
Did you see this new thing? There's a scientist out there that think that they've discovered a alternate reality in which time is perceived backwards. Did you see that?
I saw the Red Dwarf episode where they accidentally skipped so far in time that they got to the point where the universe was retracting and time was going in reverse, and they spent a week in that world. Yeah, Red Dwarf. You don't know that show? That's that science fiction show. It's kind of like a comedy Star Trek from England.
Oh, okay. No, I've never seen. No, this was a real thing. This is a real thing that came out. I'll try to find the article and link it to you. But I bring those things up because I think we take for granted our perceptions being universal, and I think there's at least a little bit of leeway in experimenting with those perceptions in a way to affect mood, right? And I feel like that's what some of these films are kind of doing. Beyond just putting in a cool color palette, a lot of these films that we've listed are messing with our perceptions of reality itself. The introduction of beings from other worlds and other realities and things coming from space, or Mandy, which is really set in this just hyper world. And for no reason that actually adds to the story other than that's the world it's set on.
Yeah.
And you're right, it creates something of a disorienting feeling, which is very different than a lot of mainstream horror does. It makes you feel like our friend of the show, Jude Walko, was in Los Angeles during the Northridge earthquake. And one of the things that he said, I don't know how familiar you are with the Northridge earthquake, but it was big. Mm-mm. It was massive.
Yeah.
And it threw Jude like 6 feet in his room from the bed to the wall. Like it was a very massive, very dangerous, very deadly earthquake. And he said that for a good amount of time afterward, he was so disoriented because the thing that you learn to trust,
right,
like the ground being solid, was removed from him. And when that goes, everything goes, right?
Yeah.
Like he was saying, like him and his girlfriend at the time were like looking at each other suspiciously because their mind was like in this fight or flight mode where like they thought everything was trying to kill them. It's very surreal. We'll have to get Jude on it sometime to describe it in more detail. But when you manipulate our perceptions of reality, it really opens the door up to tell some incredibly cool stories.
Yeah, I've been watching some other horror series on Shudder called Channel Zero. Have you heard of this one?
I've heard of it. I've not watched it yet.
It's not bad. My wife and I are about 3 seasons in. It's a different story, different arc every season.
Like anthology style?
Yeah, but I was even considering like reviewing it on the show, but I might wait until I finished the recent season to do that. But one of my problems with this, even though it's completely different writers and casts every time, every season has seemed to like suffer from this one issue, and it's that characters recover really quickly from finding out stuff like another dimension exists or ghosts exist or demons are invading your town. Like they just like they come to like, oh, that's just part of life. Okay. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's real. I don't know. I've never experienced it. Like, but that thing you're talking about where, an earthquake, which is a natural occurrence, but it got in Jude's head in such a way that his reality was a little a little more elastic for those moments, and and that's what this series has been kind of leaving out, and I think that's what possibly the cosmic stuff, the neon stuff that we're talking about, they seem to be doing a little better at explaining that with the color palettes. I mean, I think it's because in the same way you're talking about like people perceiving colors in different ways. One thing we could say is maybe these directors are using these palettes as a way to express that to the viewer, that these actors, but these characters that you're watching, they have they're kind of crossed over into something very foreign, very alien, and it's kind of hard to express that these days, because even if a spaceship lands on or a portal from hell opens up and a monster comes out, we've all seen that so many times that it's hard for us to not go, oh, okay, it's this old story, and I think that's what's happening in that Channel Zero is like, they're so used to these stories. They know we're so used to these stories that they're making it to where even the characters are comfortable in these stories, and they really shouldn't be, because like, characters in most of these films are people who have had completely normal flatline lives, for the most part, as far as this kind of stuff goes on. And then all at once they find out there's an alternate dimension that you can get to through a house. And they're just like, oh, okay, got to get out of here. They don't really see
I mean, it works if it's like
correctly.
I mean, I feel like even Rick and Morty does a better job of showcasing the disorientation of being able to cross through all these random realities. Yeah. And I think part of the reason is that we get as humans, we're very capable of being desensitized to just about everything. I mean, really, if you look at our daily lives, like any atrocity given enough time and exposure on some level will become desensitized to it. It's part of our makeup. And I think that films oftentimes fall into the same trappings, wherein it's like, they're so worried about getting to the action or the murder, right? But they kind of skip over the psychological impact that it might have on someone. You might get the token character who's like going insane, and she's pretty much the equivalent. It's almost always a woman, and it's basically the equivalent of those old like black and white films where there was a woman who was having a fit of hysteria, and some like dude slaps her to get her to think straight. It's like that old archetype still is like the most that most of these horror films kind of go to explain the trauma of seeing something unworldly.
Yeah. Because I think it really wouldn't take much, man. I mean, imagine I don't think it would take much, honestly. Like, I think the idea of, just seeing a person with an extra eye or someone growing arms, something, someone that's even just like, like someone that has the proportions of an elf, maybe they're just like 3 feet tall, but they look the proportion of a 6 foot person, just seeing that person and it's like normal and they come walking up to you. I think that would just be enough to like cause someone to just totally snap, and
I think one of the good things about these movies that we're talking about, not only like experimenting with these issues, but using a practical effect to, pardon the pun, illuminate the psychological episode, is that if you actually put physical neon lights and things of that sort around your actors, it will affect their performance.
Oh yeah,
it couldn't help to do so. Nick Cage and Mandy is about the most perfect example of someone slowly going insane I've ever seen in a movie.
Rivaled possibly by Nick Cage going insane in Color Out of Space. Which
I haven't seen that one yet. But yeah, exactly. Like, Nick Cage gets it, because Nick Cage is such a nuanced actor that he's able to sort of really feed that level of insanity.
Yeah.
And I think that the color scheme and the aesthetic really, really helped. And it also, here's the other thing. I've said this a lot of times, I think in the past, when we get into the debate of like, CGI, VFX versus practical, right?
Uh-huh.
Avatar looks incredibly fake to me as a movie.
Okay.
Right? As incredible as the technology was at the time, it looks incredibly fake to me as a movie. Could not get into it. Didn't help that it was also the plot from Fern Gully, but still.
It's shot for shot almost.
Yeah.
I mean, it was Fern Gully.
It was. Yeah. Or Dancing with the Wolves, maybe, if you want to really give it some credit. And yet I could watch the Dark Crystal, which is clearly a puppet show.
Yeah.
And be completely surrounded and indoctrinated into the world in a way that I buy in immediately. Immersed, that's the word I'm looking for. Yes, exactly. And why is that? Like, why is something that technically looks more real? I'm doing air quotes. I only have a nub. So Matt, you do air quotes for me with your hands.
I can only get an index finger up, but
all right, real.
Okay.
And yet things that clearly look fake feel more real. And I think because it's when you enter into the world of puppetry, for example, within a short amount of time, your body and your mind adjust to it that this is reality.
Yeah.
Or at very minimum, this is reality, right?
Right.
And when things try to be too real, too realistic, and I guess you could argue that Avatar, I mean, it's pretty fantasy, but it's still tried to be just too humanoid. Like, your body rejects it. Like, it's close enough, but not perfect.
I don't know if you're aware of how far Avatar actually went to try to be realistic. Like, the reason that movie is so expensive and took so long to make, it's unbelievable, man. Like, I saw this documentary on it not too long ago, and it was kind of shocking. Like the links they went to, like they wanted, for example, the Na'vi, the blue alien people, they have their own language, right? And most films do that. They'll have aliens, talk, knock, 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 the Na'vi, I mean, they hired this dialects professor, expert, and gave him like a full year. Like, they had this guy on salary for like a full year or something, and he was like writing this language, and then he coached the actors not only in how to speak the language and pronounce everything correctly, but a lot of times the Na'vi speak English with the human characters in the film, and they have an accent. They all have the same accent,
right?
And that like checks out with dialect experts. That like if you spoke a language that sounded like that, your accent in English would sound like this. Like, it was like that level of detail. There's tons of this stuff. Like, every little aspect of that film was crawled over for like 2 or 3 years before they actually took it and made the film. And there's just tons of this stuff in there. There's history books, biology books written about that planet. It's insane how far they went to try to make it realistic.
Well, not only that, but it's insane when you think of the filmmaker, James Cameron.
Yeah.
Whose Terminator 2 and Terminator 1 for that matter looks way more realistic than Avatar.
Yeah. It's a thin line, man. You gotta know exactly what you're doing to make a believable world, and it was a fun world, but in the end, it was just kind of like, it was a fun ride through an amusement park, and it was kind of cool, but it didn't feel like the sex part was. I'm sure they put a lot of thought into how they would reproduce and use those weird ponytails and like. Just tap into the roots of the trees and all that, but it just seemed kind of fake. I don't know.
All nice, all very nice detail. Who doesn't love good world building? But this is why I think that Willow is better than Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Lord of the Rings has 3 movies to mostly establish world building. And Willow just gets right to the fucking point.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point of all this bullshit for Avatar? Like, give us a good story.
Yeah.
Like, all this stuff is nice, but the problem is it doesn't actually make me feel like I'm in an altered state. For all this detail that they spent, it actually doesn't make me feel like I'm entering into this magical world that my brain just has to accept as reality. You know?
Yeah, I guess.
It's like you tried too hard to make it like justify. You know, another movie that did that is Interstellar.
Oh, I didn't watch it. The Matthew McConaughey where he goes off in space to like fix the environment or something. I didn't.
Kind of, yeah. Fix the end of the world. or something or another. Find a world that we can inhabit because our world is coming to its close.
Oh, that whole mess.
And
hey, if you're counting on that, anybody watching or listening, if you're counting on that second Earth concept, we'll just ruin this one and go to another one. That ain't happening, man. That's like that's
not unless you got Matthew McConaughey up in that ship.
Yeah, even if they did, who would want to? I mean, just moving sucks, like going to a different town.
Exactly.
Like who would want to like go to a new planet and like the food probably tastes terrible and there's all these new
if they have
viruses.
Food, I wonder if they would have blue food there.
They may, yeah. Well,
maybe they would.
All right, I'll reserve my dismissal of it. Then I might like to go visit the blue food place.
But for everything that Interstellar did to make it scientifically accurate, it feels like a movie. And I love Chris Nolan, but especially in its third act, it feels like a silly movie.
Yeah.
And yet, Armageddon, which is a silly movie, feels more dynamic, more interesting.
Better characters. Yeah.
Because you know what? From the get-go, I realized this is a stupid movie. And my brain adjusts appropriately, and it goes forward.
That's true.
And it accepts it. It accepts that it's easier to train oil drillers to be astronauts than it would be to cast astronauts and teach them to be oil drillers. My brain just accepts this and enjoys the show.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about that. Just how often I do that when I'm just kind of early on, like, oh, this is one of those stupid movies, but it doesn't try not to be. So, all right, I'm down. Let's do it.
Right. And so for those of you asking what any of this has to do with neon horror, it's exactly that. If you just establish early on that you are in a place that is not like ours, your brain will open its mind to new possibilities. The more you try to root it in reality, the more your brain will reject. It's inevitable that you will do something in your film to push the plot along or make it more dynamic or whatever that is going to fly in the face of this hyper realism you're attempting to do.
Yeah, because it really comes down to performances, writing. It's not like about as much about shot for shot quality of realism. It's like Color Out of Space. I don't want to spoil it, but like there is a part in that film where two of the characters kind of get fused together into one sort of
Iron Man.
Iron Man?
Yeah.
No, not an Iron Man like kind of thing. Is that you talking about?
Who's that Iron Man from the Japanese film?
Oh, Tetsuo the Iron Man. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
First I started with Marvel Comics Iron Man, and then I went to Black Sabbath, and I was like, well, he became like made of metal or something by traveling through time. By the way, if they want to make a heavy metal song into a movie, Black Sabbath's Iron Man, I still am on that. But
in the neon horror styling,
it could work. I mean, Neon Nights, a Black Sabbath song, the cover of Paranoid. Yeah. There's some aesthetic there.
Hell yeah.
Sure, hell yeah, man. But
yeah, see.
But getting back to Color Out of Space, there's this part where like two of these characters they go into this barn, and when they come out, like something happens, alien. When they come out, they are like stuck together, and it is disturbing as hell because it could have just focused on the which it does look very realistic. They did great practical effects, but it could have just focused on that to really drive it home how disturbing it is. But rather than that, they let us have like the next 10 minutes where these people's family tries to think of what to do with them. They've got them in the house. They're stuck together. They're obviously both in a ton of pain, but there's something, their minds aren't functioning correctly. They're just, and the level of suffering that you're watching as like these family members are like, they're losing their minds. They're going insane, trying to figure out what to do with this new situation where these two people they love are now like, this isn't something a doctor can fix. It's like it's fucked up, man. So like,
exactly. And there are ramifications.
That, like that thing of like taking you where it's like, this is how you would handle this situation too. You would not know what to do here, and like, it's that thing that the neon horror is doing. It's so I like this. I like this concept, this neon horror concept you've come up with. This is good.
Now, what did you think about Blood Machines?
Oh, that was awesome, man. Okay, so yeah, I'm glad you went to Blood Machines, because I was going to say there's another aspect of these cosmic neon horror films, and that's the soundtrack is often a very synthesizer heavy kind of 80s feeling soundtrack, which is interesting because that neon color, the neon palette, is sort of associated with the 80s too. And what do you think is the connection there? Because Blood Machines had a Carpenter Brut, the band that kind of gives tribute to those John Carpenter
French electronic band.
They kind of do that style of those great John Carpenter soundtracks of the 80s and 90s. They do the whole soundtrack for Blood Machines, and it works so well. In fact, when I looked up the film, the Wikipedia description has it listed as a musical, which is kind of, there's no singing in it, but
I can kind of see where it would. Yeah.
Well, there is a pretty awesome dance number, though, I'll say. But
that's true.
But yeah, what do you think's going on there with, like, is there something to that, to this neon cosmic horror? Is there something to, like, the 80s aesthetic that they're kind of mixing in?
I think so. Well, because if you look at the origin of electronic music, right? I think we've talked about Devo before.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the early pioneers of electronic music, part of the aesthetic of the music itself was this disassociated feeling from reality. Right? Like, the music was meant to evoke these feelings of disassociation, right? A lack of humanity, a coldness, an outsider look, right?
Yeah.
And
the musicians were androids, robots. They were androgynous.
Right.
The lyrics were almost like brief summaries of science fiction plots. I think of Gary Newman, Our Friends Electric, where he wrote a song about kind of like a mail order sex androids, and like how they would deliver that. He thought of that concept of I don't want to get too much of a rabbit trail, but it's kind of funny. Like, back in the day when people would order pornography, it would show up on your front porch. The package would have some different label, like cooking supplies or something like that. And he thought, when we have android prostitutes,
Matt has a huge porno collection.
when we have android prostitutes that come to your house, they're going to show up dressed as plumbers or census, something like that.
Yeah,
and only Mormons. You're going to know why they're actually there, and that's
right.
But that,
Is it Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses that come to your door?
Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses both come.
Oh, they both do.
Yeah, and occasionally Catholics.
Well, there you go. So next time they knock on your door, they may be android sex dolls.
But so
let them in.
Be careful. But yeah, so what you're kind of saying is, like, in the same way that the synth music was tapping into a sort of future storytelling that would become more popular, the cyberpunk and the strange horror and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it was like kind of predicting its place in the future of cinema, kind of being ahead of its time. That they were
very much so
unaware that they were making the soundtracks of the films that they were predating. That's interesting.
Yeah, and also cheers to the filmmakers, that for observing and appropriately picking these types of musical genres to accent the unsettled vibe of their movies, right? It's such a appropriate fit when you've got these, like, again, these are unnatural color schemes, right, and lighting schemes, and to then put this really sort of like fuzzy, synthy, electronically, it just adds to it. It all adds to the overall aesthetic. And we talk about Blood Machines. Carpenter Brut is one of my favorite bands. I got really lucky. I got to see them. Me and Ophelia, we went to this metal festival in Prague, right? Like extreme, heavy, dark black metal and death metal. And then one of the headlining bands was Carpenter Brut, which, if you've listened to them, they're very synth pop.
Right.
And they fucking slayed, man. They were excellent. And it's not just me that thought that. Like, the whole crowd of these Heshers, these East European Heshers and people from all across the world gathered together. We've all been drinking and headbanging, and then the synth pop band comes up, and everyone was so into it. And it just goes to show you that people connect with this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And for Carpenter Brut, I think the filmmaker who did Blood Machines did a music video with them, which was very much in the same stylings when you watch the movie. And so then they decided to, these are French artists, and they decided to make a film based on, or at least scored by Carpenter Brut, and this wild, wacky, sci-fi existential story with a heavy usage of this very weird lighting pattern that some of these films are using, but in combination with this very strange sort of VFX green screen environment.
Right. Yeah. It is. It's a new way of looking at horror, and a new way of describing the disassociation and the terror that we should feel. With this unnatural palette that we're seeing. So if you haven't seen some of the films we're talking about, what is there any we left out? We got Mandy, The Void, Beyond the Black Rainbow.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about Blood Machines, and I want to kind of get your take on it because it's a weird film.
Okay.
And I'll share briefly. I did 3 tweets. I was live tweeting as I watched it.
All right.
And my first tweet, and I'm paraphrasing it because I have had VR glasses on. My first tweet was, I don't understand what this is about, but I'm here for it. Because when you go on to Shudder, when you subscribe to Shudder and you watch this film, it's chapterized. Now, I don't know if this was the intent of the filmmakers or if this is something that Shudder kind of made the decision on, but it is chapterized.
Yeah.
And so chapter 1 is, I think, like 17 minutes. And I had no idea what was going on, but I was in. Chapter 2, I'm starting to understand what's going on. I wish this edible had kicked in sooner. And then chapter 3, this was fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my emotional progression through watching this roughly, hour-long film?
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on it?
I liked it a lot, man. It's like one of my favorite things to think about when I think about technology and the kind of where we're at now and where it's going to go. I like to go way the hell out there, like Frank Herbert, 10,000 years in the future, logical conclusion, that kind of stuff. And essentially the film is about possible future of artificial intelligence, where you've got these artificially intelligent spaceships, and what we have is a warship shoots down an artificially intelligent spaceship, which has no one in it, and that the warship has its own AI also. And they want to scrap this ship that they've shot down and has crash landed on this planet, when these women, who they describe as scavengers, come to protect the ship. And the women seem to have this kind of...
Speaking of box dye...
Yeah. but they seem to have this kind of religion almost, where they believe that these artificially intelligent ships are something much more than just a ship. They're living beings. They want to protect it like you would protect a dying elephant or something from poachers. It's almost that kind of thing. It's like
they seem to think they have souls.
Yes. And so it's really cool because to me it didn't require you to believe in a soul. It has a religious, spiritual feel to it, but because it's so far in the future, you can also kind of look into it as like, who knows what technology will become, and what, biology and AI and nanotechnology and all that stuff. I mean, you're just seeing a new world. You're seeing something that is like so strange and new, and you're just going through this weird story in this world. And kind of like how you were talking about, Dave. It doesn't take much time to explain to you where you are. It doesn't give you the year or anything. It's just like...
It just drops you the fuck in.
Yeah, here we are.
It's... I wonder, when it comes to AI, which is essentially just a software program, right? Can you really destroy a software program? I mean, I guess you can delete it, right?
Well...
But if you don't delete it, does not a software program exist forever?
I don't know. To me, it's kind of like almost like the Star Trek teleporter paradox, where the teleporter basically makes a copy of you and puts that copy on another planet. But
the man in the box,
it doesn't. If it's making a copy of you, cell for cell, everything perfect, and then it's just like creating it again on another planet. Is it sending you there, or is it creating a copy of you there and then destroying the original? So because it's to me, it's about
who did that?
It's about the consciousness.
Who did that excellently?
Well, who's that?
The Prestige. The Prestige explored that idea excellently with Hugh Jackman's character. He gets that machine from Tesla and he teleports, but it creates a copy every time. So he's got to kill the original one. Did you ever watch
No,
Prestige?
I haven't seen it, but
what? It's so great. Okay, go back and watch it. This is totally off topic, but like if you want to explore this man in the box theory, which is exactly what you're talking about, watch The Prestige. It does it in a very grim way. Totally different kind of film, but that's an aside.
Well,
but yes,
the idea that I'm getting at is it seems to me that in Star Trek they it's kind of like a military organization, so they've accepted their own possibility of dying and stuff. So it kind of seems to me like the crew would, if they have to teleport somewhere, it's for the good of the mission, and they're okay with this. I don't know, but then at the same time, it's like, is it a form of dying? And that's kind of where I get with like AI. It's like because I could the thing about us is we feel sentient. But that whole thing of free will and consciousness, there's no real like scientific proof of it. So if you
well, we have consciousness, obviously, but
we don't know. Well, when I say there's no scientific proof, I mean that it's not something you can just show. You don't. It's something we kind of say we have and we experience, but we don't.
We can observe, but you can't measure.
And so like I think what I'm getting to with AI, it's like if you shut, if those ships are just software, okay, which they were something special, whatever, if it ends up just being what you're saying, like an algorithm or something, but like if they are sentient, if they're experiencing the things they're experiencing and then they're broken to where they don't function anymore, even if they're repaired later, is it the same thing? It's one of those kind of things. It's like I don't know. It's a weird thing, but like I could see a reality in which whatever those ships were becomes so special that other people want to protect it. Other people start to respect it. It's kind of like I bring up the Animatrix along, which if you like the Matrix and you haven't seen the Animatrix DVD with all the little short films, man, they really explore that concept so much, because it's this, you get to this point where it explains how the Matrix came to be, and it's like, if we ever get to a point where there's some artificially intelligent beings and they're saying we want to exist, we want to express ourselves, we want to be part of your world, do we give them rights? Do we let them, or do we even listen to them, or do we think, oh, they've malfunctioned and try to destroy them?
It does what every great science fiction movie, or maybe not everyone, it does what a lot of great science fiction movies have done. It asks whether or not these programs are essentially the same as our souls. If you believe in souls,
which I don't,
right? There are people who would argue that for humanity, what we consider a soul or a consciousness, whatever, is really nothing but a bioengineered complex algorithm of chemical reactions and fusions and what have you that we perceive as consciousness. Well, is that much different than a computer algorithm? And if that's the case, then is it not as important as what we value, or is what we value not as important as a computer program?
Right. Yeah. It's like Philip K. Dick. Do androids dream of electric sheep? Do they dream? I mean, it's
if Philip K. Dick is Android's creator, right? If he's a god of science fiction, do androids dream of Dick?
That's a weird joke. Okay. But yeah, it was amazing, man. I mean, that's the thing about art, like, because it is like a musical, a choreographed dance. It feels like a music video at some points. It's a sci-fi story. It's all these things. It's only 50 minutes long total.
It's all neon glowing upside down crosses.
But yeah, in the end, you're kind of going. You're thinking about it. You're thinking about this. I mean, this idea of we can create AI and maybe it gets to a sentient point and it becomes, the only thing we can use to pilot these ships, these advanced trajectories, but do we respect it if it gets bored?
Right.
What it was, if it's actually having experiences, then does it even want to be a ship?
Right, and what if it doesn't?
Exactly. So but that's kind of what the movie asks without asking it. It's fantastic.
It's so good. It's weird. It takes you a while, but it's an experience. It's a ride, and you're immediately immersed in that experience, and you think about it. To your point, you think about it for a long time because there's some pretty deep questions being asked there that not only apply to AI, but also apply to humanity. It applies to us as well. If we, especially for those of you who are the more science inclined people, it really does. There's a lot of parallels that can be drawn with the advancement of software technology and our own complex bioengineering.
Yeah. And
at some point, we're going to have to ask some very, very serious questions. This VR program that we're using is a software program, right? Thank you to Big Screen for allowing us to project our avatars in this weird, nebulous, neon horror landscape. But what if the AI that is controlling these worlds decides they no longer want to paint on this palette?
Yeah.
What if they decide they want to create music? What if they decide they want to do sculpting? But you've designed it. Yeah. You've designed it to do one purpose, and what if it then has desires beyond that? These are weird.
That's when you pull the plug. You just unplug it.
And then if that's the case,
I don't know.
If that's the case, are you murdering?
Yeah, right.
Because if you believe that we're nothing more than just complex bioengineering, then when someone pulls the plug on us, we consider it murder and it's bad and all these things. But if we're no different than the machines,
well, then
aren't we not just committing murder with machines?
Then maybe it's who unplugs who first, because they may get the same idea. Well, so Blood Machines, do you want to give it a rating?
Yes. I'm going to rate it... I'm going to rate it 3 3/4 Tusk. Yes. And I only don't give it 4 Tusk because I really love it. I think it's really cool, but it's only an hour.
Yeah.
And while I appreciate sort of different forms of storytelling, I am a big... I do put a lot of emphasis on story, and this is all abstract. There's a story there. There's questions being asked of you, really more than there is a solid story. The story is pretty simple, but its purpose is more to raise questions than it is to share a story with you, right? And so for that reason only, I'm gonna shave a quarter of a tusk off. Just gonna shave the sharp part down a little bit.
My goodness, you have done some work on our rating system, man. You are just really having some liberties with it lately.
Hey, I made it up.
4. I am the creator. 4 out of 5 from me because this is it's a must. Right. It's a must watch. It's really great. You're gonna love it, and it's if you like the kind of musical sci-fi stuff in the vein of like Daft Punk's Interstellar 55, these films that are like about as long as an album and kind of have a similar feel. This is one of those. This is in leagues with that. It's very the music is very important. What?
We got to give a little credit to a godfather of this genre that I don't think gets nearly enough credit, and that's Tron Legacy.
Because the sequel to Tron?
The sequel to Tron. Yeah. Because you can see the direct influence between Tron Legacy in the way that they did their suits, in the way that they had Daft Punk score it, and Blood Machines, which it's a lot more art house certainly than Tron Legacy, but you could tell they borrowed a lot of these same aesthetics, and they went to a popular electronic musical artist to score it, much like Tron Legacy did, You know?
Yeah.
I'd love to see. You know what I'd love to see? I'd love to see Blood Machines in VR.
Yeah. Okay.
You know?
Yeah. That'd
be kind of
like
cool.
360 where you could look all around and stuff.
Totally. Yeah.
I could get on board with that. Well. All right, so there's Blood Machines. We've talked about neon horror, films of cosmic scope with a whole different palette that just gets you all disoriented and strange. The Void, possibly Enter the Void too. That I forgot about that one. Yeah, Mandy. Beyond the Black Rainbow, Color Out of Space.
It's a lot of great ones.
Yeah, if we're leaving any out, but look into it, see what you think. In other news this week, Joe Bob's Last Drive-In was fantastic. If you haven't seen this episode,
was it?
This was a good one. I missed it
because I was recording the other podcast during it, so I had it on in the background.
You are podcasting these days, my friend. You are in some shows. He's a busy guy,
but by the time I was done recording and I got back into it, the movie was like 3/4 of the way done, and I kind of missed all the opening. I heard there was something about Gillette razors.
Oh, that, man, it was whatever. I mean, that was okay. That made me wonder when they recorded this. That was a bit of an old thing, but I guess people have been asking him to comment on that Gillette commercial that kind of posed itself as a short film a while back. But right. Other than that, the films he shows, Exorcist 3, which is surprisingly cool. It's weird. It's different. You got to see that one. But
now, was that a real Exorcist film, or was that a film that they had a script for and then they slapped Exorcist's name on it?
It's one of those things. It's the guy that wrote The Exorcist. He had another book that he wanted to adapt a film called Legion, and they made it be an Exorcist film. And there is technically an exorcism in it, but it's so like weak the way they just kind of inject it at the end, like, a little bit of exorcism there, like we need an exorcist, like a priest just shows up and does a little like noonie and then like a gun. It's okay, but
did he shoot the demon possessed Legion dude with like a water gun full of holy water?
No, that needs to happen in a film, because that shit is getting hilarious. I saw that
shit's happening in real life.
I know. I saw the priest actually like squirting a baby with a squirt gun from like 6 feet away. Fucking awesome.
That's hilarious.
It's great stuff.
I love it.
I mean, if I was priest, I would probably like invest. They got money, man. Like they're using them crappy HEB grocery store squirt guns. It's like, get the super soaker, man. Spend some money on it.
Also,
get the battery powered shit.
I think even when the world goes back to normal, I think it's just generally a good idea that we maintain that 6-foot difference between priests and kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So
there's no harm that can come from that.
So Exorcist 3 was pretty fun, and you learned some cool stuff watching it with Joe Bob. But the film they showed second, last week we talked about One Cut of the Dead and how
awesome.
It was
Six Tusk.
Independent cinema done right, like independent cinema at like a genius level, done right. Well, this film was called Deadbeat by Dawn by Jim Van Bieber, an independent filmmaker. And if One Cut of the Dead is independent cinema done right, Deadbeat at Dawn is independent cinema done no matter what. Like, this was like the most guerrilla cinema thing you've ever seen, man. It's just like, it's a movie about gang warfare in Dayton, Ohio in the 80s. And it is like, actors trespassing to get shots. There's one part where they wanted the gang chase to like go through a parade, so they just found out like this high school marching band would just be, and so they just went and like ran through this parade with their cameras and everything. The shots are amazing, but it's practically like nothing but stolen shots the whole film.
Right,
this guy that he had made some film when he was in high school that got a lot of acclaim,
accolades,
and he got a $10,000 scholarship to this film school, and decided to just he decided to just like drop out and take the rest of his scholarship and make the movie he'd been wanting to make. And that's what this film is. It's shot on 16 millimeter because he believes everything has to be shot on film no matter what, and he apparently still shoots on 16 millimeter to this day. Man, it's unique. You got to see it. It's not a great film by any means, but it is it's a cult classic. I mean, it's definitely a cult film, but it's like, I've never seen something. I mean, these people get hurt making this movie, and I bet it's on accident, but it's awesome stuff too. I mean, it is so like, it's kind of like we're talking today about like synthesizers in the 80s, and this is like that other side of like fingerless gloves and nunchucks and headbands, you know, and just like
nice.
like a way to be a badass that only existed in the 80s, man. And man, it's so good. It was cool. I was really glad I watched it. You have a ton of fun with this one. It's so ridiculous. And Joe Bob said he played it because even though it's an action film, it has the gore of a horror film, and it did hold up there too. Right. So yeah, check it out.
It's a drive-in movie show. Doesn't say horror in the title.
That's right.
So I think that's a pass.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what would you say? I've not seen that. So what would you give it from a Tusk rating standpoint?
That's a tough one. I'm gonna lock it down at 3. I don't do like you, the quarter tusks and stuff, man. I go for it. You know, if I believe in something. Okay. So like it, because it's. So
you'd recommend watching it?
I'm rounding up, but yeah, I think I definitely just did recommend watching it. I mean, I had fun. I'm telling you, it's cool. Okay. You've never seen anything like it. It's bizarre.
Well, check that out. Let us know what you guys think. And I think it's about that time when we go and answer a couple of audience questions.
All right. Sounds good to me.
Questions from Macaret.
From Kudamaro from the Slasher app, the premier horror app for fans, artists, and creators. Have you seen Kung Pao Enter the Fist? And if so, what did you think?
Yes, multiple times.
I've not seen it. And I always get it confused with what's that movie? Kung Fu Hustle. Because they came out around the same time, right?
Well, a few years apart, but yeah, very different. But Kung Pao...
They're totally different.
Kung Pao was this film made by an American comedian in which he took real clips from awesome Kung Fu films of the 70s, you know, like Shaolin Monk stuff, like all kinds of really cool Shogun films from the 70s. And he spliced them all together and superimposed himself into this to make this ridiculous kung fu comedy in which he's this like chosen one. And man, it is. And it's also completely dubbed over with comedic actors and stuff. So you're watching real classic stuff, but like completely cut up and transformed into this ridiculous film. But if you haven't seen Kung Pao Enter the Fist, man, it's fun. It's great.
All right. Well, I may have to. And also,
is that the question? Just have we seen it?
Yeah. And what do we think about it?
It's great. Yeah. Good one. Yeah.
Yeah. I've not seen it. I will watch it. I've seen Kung Fu Hustle. I love that movie.
From top listener Sam V. Blair, what are your top 5 horror movies?
I think we've done like an episode that's just
probably
called that.
Let's change it up. Yeah. Let's change it up. Let's see. Let's do top 5 horror films that are really weird.
Let's rank the neon horror films that we talked about today.
Let's rank. Okay, we'll do that. How about that? Yeah. Okay. Well, what's our list? I wish we could write in this world.
Okay.
I could like just see it.
So
okay, let's
number 5. I'm gonna say Blood Machines. It's at the bottom of the 5, but it's still really good. Like, they're all really good.
Okay.
Like, every film we talked about today is fucking great.
Yeah, they're excellent. Yeah. I mean, if you're watching us on YouTube, you're seeing clips of The Void behind us, and it's fucking awesome.
Yeah. What's number 4?
I think probably you recommended Bliss, and I think that that probably should belongs on that list, but maybe a little lower on the list. Maybe 4. Seems fair.
All right. At number 3, I'm going to put Beyond the Black Rainbow.
Oh, excellent. I've not seen The Color Out of Space yet. So I'm going to put that 2. Because I'm going to assume it's amazing.
Based on the trailer and
your review and everything else. Like, it can't be lower than 2.
All right, fair enough.
Maybe it'd overtake number 1, but I think that right now I'll set it right at number 2.
And I'm going to say it's the film we did our first episode on. Is the king of neon horror, and that's Mandy. Because
Mandy is such a great film.
So good.
It's excellent. It's one of those films you can just watch over and over and over again. So we've ranked our top 5 neon horror films, and we hope that answers your question. And Sam, we know you're an avid listener, so you probably have a good idea of our favorite horror films in general.
Yeah.
But as far as let's highlight let's shine a neon spotlight on some of these newer, weirder. There's a giant triangle in this movie that we're watching. Let's shine a neon spotlight on them and give them a little bit of love and go down into a spiral of weirdness. Let's enter the void of the obscure.
Yeah, and Sam, if you just want like some cool recommendations, Slither is still in my top 5 if you've never seen it. I love Slither.
Yeah.
What else?
The Prince of Darkness.
Prince of Darkness is fantastic. The Thing. Yeah. I mean, we definitely have discovered our top horror films. We did the audience thing.
What about a horror movie that you love that maybe for one reason or another you haven't yet talked about on this show?
I have to. Well, shoot. I don't know if there is one. We've done a lot of episodes.
We have done a lot of episodes. We do talk about horror a lot. Let me just think. Is there a horror film? I've talked about Dark City a bunch. That's not really horror, but I love it. Let me just think. It's got to have been. You know what we haven't talked about? That's a great throwback horror film is Hatchet. Did you ever see Hatchet?
I don't think so.
It's definitely a very derivative of the Friday the 13th series, but it came out like in the early 2000s. It's great. It's if you want some like old school hack and slash, Hatchet's really great to watch.
All right.
Let's see here. Just because I'm inspired by again, if you're watching The Void, Event Horizon, which is sort of one part horror, one part sci-fi.
Yes, and some have even said, if you're a Warhammer fan out there, there are pretty good arguments that Event Horizon may have tried to put itself as a prequel to Warhammer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some stuff about some apparently there's evil forces that come from Void Dimension and Warhammer, and when people have mistakes in hyperspace travel and stuff, they may find themselves in that dimension and they come back sort of corrupted priests and whatnot, kind of like how Sam Neill had that whole experience.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Hellraiser, all the Hellraiser movies.
Sure.
Excellent. Yeah. Man, I was going to mention something just now and I lost my train of thought. Well, I guess it wasn't that important.
We have any more questions?
So, nope, no more questions. We're all done. The evil alien dude in the Void is opening another dimension. And it's about that time that we enter our own other dimension, which is the IRL dimension.
Oh, I thought you just wanted to stay here on this purple planet. This place is pretty great, man.
I would love to.
Go see what the surface is or something down there.
Yeah, this is pretty cool space. So check us out on YouTube if you're listening to us just through Spotify or iTunes, or for you mumble rappers out there, SoundCloud. Check us out on YouTube because we do some cool stuff, and thank you to Big Screen for providing us this very cool environment. I really think it set the tone for the conversation and really allowed us to immerse ourselves into the weirdness that is neon horror. Adios.
You're listening to the Grindhaus podcast on the Blood and Glow network. Please follow us on Instagram at Grindhaus Podcast and listen to us every Monday on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and now on YouTube.